keep those levels stable to improve your mood, give you more energy, and basically just help you end the year on a high note rather than in a sugar slump. Okay, that's working. So my name is Debbie Fimple. I am a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach as well as a Functional Medicine Certified Health Coach. I have a private coaching practice where I work with men and women in midlife to help them optimize their health and longevity through lifestyle change. Okay, before we get started, and especially while your mouths are full, we're going to start with a quick quiz to warm ourselves up. There's a lot of fact and fiction that just gets confused out there around blood sugar management. So we're just going to do a 3-question true or false quiz. So read the questions and then feel free to shout out the answer, and we can have a brief discussion of each before we dive in. So the first one is true or false, you should eat every 1 to 2 hours to help maintain stable blood sugar levels.
False.
False.
True.
Okay.
I'm gonna say false.
Abstain.
Oh, yeah.
This is false. Actually, it's a little bit of a trick question because when you eat food that is made up of more simple carbs that are quickly digested, you will feel like you need to eat every 1 to 2 hours. But this is not good for your blood sugar management and your insulin response. This will get you on that roller coaster of swings in your blood sugar levels and is not optimal. We'll talk about how to eat in a way that keeps your levels more steady so that you're not eating every 1 to 2 hours. But again, this is false. This is not how you should be maintaining your blood sugar. Okay, question 2. Eating foods with artificial sweeteners is a good choice for helping to maintain your blood sugar.
False.
False.
Maybe. Probably
What?
false. Probably false.
That's okay, tell her what you're doing. This is also false. So while artificial sweeteners do not have any calories and therefore they don't directly impact your blood sugar levels, eating them is very counterproductive for your metabolic processes. When your brain, via your taste buds, gets the signal that there's something sweet coming when you eat artificial sweeteners, your body prepares accordingly by releasing hormones such as insulin, some digestive enzymes to prepare to process that sweet. Then when the nutrients and the calories that should be in that sweet don't follow, it can confuse your body. Over time, if you eat a lot of these, consume a lot of these, you can end up with glucose intolerance. This can lead to insulin resistance, and your body can become less effective at processing real sugar when you do eat it. So it's very counterproductive. Additionally, artificial sweeteners are more sweet than natural sweeteners, and so eating them on a regular basis can kind of tweak your taste buds and intensify your cravings for things that are actually sweet, which can be hard to resist and then can further exacerbate blood sugar management problems. Okay, last question. Stress can affect your blood sugar levels even without eating anything.
True.
Yes.
True.
Okay. Yes. That is true. So when we encounter a stressor, our adrenal glands are signaled to release cortisol and adrenaline, and this then triggers our liver to release glycogen in the form of glucose that travels to our muscles to help us fight or flee from the proverbial tiger that is the stressor. And this is the natural innate response that we are well designed for, and is an appropriate response as long as we recover from that and come out of that stress. When we stay in a state of chronic stress with those stress hormones chronically elevated, it can keep our blood glucose also chronically elevated, and this can become a problem.
It also throws your brain out of whack, and I'll talk about that too.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Stress, very, very highly related to both. Okay, so before we dive into the tips, I just want to go over some basic background around blood sugar, help us get on the same page around the kind of science-based facts. So our blood sugar levels are primarily driven by our consumption of carbohydrates. These are dietary sugars and starches. And there are 2 forms of carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are found in juice, soda, sweets, anything made with white flour or with white sugar. These carbohydrates are simple chains and are easily and very quickly broken down. And when you eat them kind of on their own, they lead to rapid elevations of blood sugar, which is called glucose, rapid elevations, and then can lead to crashes. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, are whole food, fruits, vegetables, and minimally processed whole grains that include fiber. And these are processed by our system much more slowly, leading to a gradual breakdown and a gradual release of glucose into our system. So we have steadier levels and more sustained energy. When our blood glucose rises, it signals to our pancreas to release some insulin. Depending on how much blood glucose there is will depend on how much insulin is released. And insulin acts like a key. It travels with the glucose to cells and attaches to the cells to open the cells and let the glucose in, where it is used for energy or stored for later use. The amount of insulin released depends both on the amount of glucose in our system as well as how sensitive the cells are to that insulin signal. Over time, if we repeatedly have high levels of glucose leading to high levels of insulin, our cells become less sensitive to that insulin, and so the key just doesn't work as well to open the cells. And the pancreas will respond by releasing more and more insulin, but eventually the pancreas gets tired and blood glucose is not able to get into the cells to be used for energy, and those levels stay high. And that's when we end up with prediabetes and then eventually diabetes. Along the way, insulin is also used as a signal to cells to help them store fat. And I just want to say a little bit more about that because I think it's really interesting. From an evolutionary perspective, insulin was critical to our role in fat storage to help us survive. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors would rarely find on their gathering expeditions carbs, and these might be in the form of honey or berries. When they did find and were able to consume these, insulin helped to their bodies to store these carbs away for future use in the form of fat. And this was a really beneficial mechanism to those ancestors who went long periods between successful gathering expeditions and allowed them to survive, and the ones who were most efficient at storing these excess carbs, excess sugar as fat, were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. So these are the genes that we have today. We have not evolved far beyond those. However, in our current modern world of 24/7 food availability and highly processed food, this mechanism actually works against us. If we're constantly eating simple carbs that are keeping our blood glucose and therefore our insulin high, we're kept in that kind of fat storage mode, and we're not able to tap into those reserves, so this can hinder our weight management efforts. So it's really important to manage your insulin levels by eating in a way that keeps your blood glucose stable, because therefore then your insulin is kept low. You're able to be more successful in weight loss and keep your body composition how you would like it to be. So that's just a couple of factoids here. Our ancestors may have accessed or been able to consume 20 teaspoons of sugar a year, and these days on average we are eating up to 17 teaspoons of sugar a day. So quite a difference. Okay, so our blood glucose levels are in a range. I'm sure everyone's familiar with getting those fasting blood glucose tests. It's measured in milligrams per deciliter, and the kind of range of homeostasis is 70 to 100 at fasting. And then when we eat, our levels should really not go above 140. So 70 to 140 is kind of the range that our body likes to stay in. Additionally, on average, in a fasting state, the average person will have about 4 grams of glucose circulating in their blood at any one time. That's just about 1 teaspoon. So if we have something to eat that has a ton of sugar in it, and we flood our system with glucose, we can quickly have a blood glucose spike that creates some issues. Some examples here. So remember, on average, we have about 4 grams of glucose circulating in our system at one time. A candy cane has about 10 grams of sugar. Fudge can have up to 20 grams in a piece. A sugar cookie has 16 grams. Does anyone know how many grams of sugar are in a can of Coke?
Like 50?
32.
Oh.
39.
Oh,
Ding, 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 you win. So if we eat or drink any of these things, especially in absence of some protein or fiber that can help slow that digestion, it will hit our system all at once. Our blood glucose will skyrocket. This will cause a corresponding release of insulin. And sometimes our pancreas is not exact in the amount of insulin it releases to address that. If it sees a huge spike in glucose, it might release a huge amount of insulin that could end up being more than is needed. So what often happens is that huge amount of insulin released can end up pushing more glucose into the cells, which will drop our levels below the range that our body likes. So at that point, we're feeling tired, we may have some brain fog, and this kicks off our body's innate craving for sugar because our body wants to keep on getting back up into that mid-band range where it's comfortable. So this all is very stressful for our body. This is a biological and a chemical stress on our bodies. Internally, our bodies feel like we're running from the tiger, and it ages our bodies and our brains. And it contributes to all of these conditions. High blood sugar levels create inflammation in our body, especially within our blood vessels, leading to cardiovascular disease. A weakened immune system, high amounts of blood sugar can actually suppress our white blood cells for up to 5 hours after we eat. We talked about how it contributes to type 2 diabetes. High blood sugar levels are damaging to the good bacteria in our guts, and many of our neurotransmitters are generated in our guts, including serotonin, and so dysregulated blood sugar levels can also lead to depression. We talked about insulin as the fat storage hormone, so that can lead to weight gain. And then a large European study found that women with chronically high blood sugar levels were at a much higher risk of developing cancers of the pancreas, skin, uterus, and urinary tract. So, not good things. What are some signs of blood glucose dysregulation? These include difficulty losing weight, having constant sweet cravings, or feeling like you consistently need to eat every 1 to 2 hours, or having that energy crash, feeling like you need to have a nap after you eat, irritability or even shakiness between meals. I think everyone's felt that kind of like hypoglycemia. Feeling like you need caffeine or sugar to keep up your energy throughout the day, poor memory or brain fog. And then skin conditions like acne or eczema can be a side effect of the inflammation that is created through high blood sugar levels. So we've all probably gotten the fasting glucose levels or the A1C test at our physicians on our yearly appointments. Even if these are normal, our body, going back to this, works really hard to keep us in these normal levels. And so what's happening is that we can, if we're having some dysregulation of our sugars, that our insulin, our pancreas can keep on producing more and more insulin to keep it within this level until the pancreas gets tired. So one additional test that you could request from your doctor is a fasting insulin test, because insulin levels will rise much before, I've heard anywhere from like 5 to 10 years before blood glucose levels rise. So this isn't a typical standard test. I know I asked my PCP for it and they were like, we don't do this, but it is cheap and it is something that is easy to do, and any lab should be able to do it. So if it's something that might be of interest to you, that's a good thing to ask for. Stable levels of blood glucose lead to more effective weight loss and management. We're able to regulate our hunger hormones, which include ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and leptin, which is our hormone that helps us feel satiated better, which helps us prevent overeating. We'll have improved energy, better sleep, healthier digestion through a healthier gut microbiome and balance, balanced hormones, definitely reduced sugar cravings, a stronger immune system, more balanced moods, clearer skin, and of course reduced risk for chronic disease. The last note on optimized brain health, our brains account for 2% of our body weight. However, they consume 20% of our glucose. and our brains are not able to store any glucose, unlike other cells in our body. So when we have variabilities in our levels, this can really affect our cognition, our concentration, our memory, and our mood. Additionally, variability in blood glucose can lead to neurological diseases. You may all have heard Alzheimer's referred to as type 2 diabetes because it is highly correlated with dysregulated blood sugar. So really important for brain health, and Gina will expand on that. Okay, so let's get into the tips. So these are tips that you can use anytime, but I find them particularly helpful during the busy holiday season. The first one is to make your breakfast or the first meal you eat of the day savory. And I misspelled this on purpose just to emphasize that it's not just breakfast, but it is the meal that's breaking your fast. Prioritize protein and fiber to help steady your blood sugar levels right from the start. If you have a big dinner or event later in the day, it's often tempting to eat lightly earlier in the day to try to save up your calories, but this can be counterproductive as it can increase your cravings, causing you to overeat later and just have your blood sugar levels not be as regulated. So if you're able to establish steady patterns from the beginning of the day that will continue through later on and positively influence your eating patterns and help you reduce your cravings so you can stick to whatever your healthy eating plan is. So my recommendation here is to choose the eggs, avocado on whole grain toast, yogurt or cottage cheese with whole fruit, a smoothie that includes greens and proteins, or oats with protein for breakfast over the muffins and pancakes and pastries and all of that. Yes. Yeah, please ask
How do you
questions.
feel about sourdough versus whole grain toast?
Sourdough, if it's real sourdough,
Mhm.
then that's actually a fermented food, which is really good for you and good for your gut bugs. And real sourdough during the fermentation process actually consumes a lot of the gluten in the sourdough, which lowers the glycemic index.
Okay.
So that's as great of a choice as whole grain toast, as long as it's real sourdough, which is sometimes hard to suss out.
How do you, is there like a certain ingredient that, so I eat sourdough toast, Rudy's organic
That's what I eat
sourdough
too,
toast.
and that-
Okay,
yeah.
so that's good.
You
Okay.
have to make your own.
I know, I was like,
You have your own sourdough baby. Yeah, good question. Sourdough, if you're gonna eat bread, that's a really good,
Okay, so
that's a good
it's-
choice, and it shouldn't impact your blood sugar
Okay.
levels
Perfect.
as much. And good for your gut bugs too. Secondly, food order matters a lot. So when you're sitting down to a big meal, eating that fiber and protein first will help you, those will be broken down more slowly, and therefore whatever you eat afterwards in terms of the simple carbs will follow that and also lead to a less big increase in your glucose levels. These are also the most, fiber and protein are the most more nutrient dense than some of the simple carbs. And so you will maybe have less cravings for the simple carbs after you eat those first. So this looks like when you're sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner, having the green beans, maybe a salad, your turkey or other protein source before you hit the potatoes and the rolls and the cranberry. And then saving dessert truly for dessert. Try not to eat sweets on an empty stomach, but have that balanced meal first. If you're going to an event that is going to be more appetizers and grazing, hit the crudités, have the raw veggies, which are usually there in some form, before the cheese and crackers and dips and spreads. Okay. And then the magic bullet here is apple cider vinegar, and I've given you all a sample of that. Apple cider vinegar can be especially helpful in managing blood sugar elevations after eating simple carbs or a meal that's more rich in that. It contains acetic acid, which both helps to slow the digestion of the glucose in your system, as well as helps your cells actually absorb more glucose. So together, these can reduce a rise in blood glucose by up to 20%. And the way that you do it is you have a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar mixed into a large glass of water about a half an hour before you're going to eat a heavier, rich meal. It's very important that you mix the apple cider vinegar into the water and not have it alone, because that can be very damaging to your esophagus. Yeah, this is not, do not take the shot in front of you. If you do not like the taste of it, you could make a salad dressing with apple cider vinegar, and then you're hitting your salad protein goal first, as well as getting some apple cider vinegar. There are some products out there that try to make apple cider vinegar more palatable by adding sweeteners to it, and I would just be wary of these, because it'll be counterproductive if you're having your sweetener with your, maybe they'll cancel each other out, but it probably won't be as good as if you just took it on its own.
Can you just take your apple cider vinegar in the cupboard and mix it? I mean, this seems like a fancy thing. Once I'm done with this fancy thing,
Like an apple-
like
your
your
apple cider vinegar.
Like your big
Yeah.
jar of.
yes, that I only use to catch the fruit flies right now in
Yeah.
my house, but.
Makes sense.
Yes, or you could put this in your purse and take it out to a restaurant.
Yeah.
So,
Like
But
when
yes,
you order.
you can use
You
it.
can,
Yes.
you don't have to have the small.
What about
No.
apple cider vinegar like pills? Do those work as well, or?
so I think the pills, as long as it's just apple cider vinegar, I've seen it in gummy form too, but
Yeah.
again, you have, the gummies
The
will have
mixed
sugar in
ones,
them,
yeah.
and then you have the sugar
Okay.
issue.
Yeah.
So, I feel like the liquid is probably more quickly absorbed.
Yeah.
So if it's a gel tab,
Yeah.
then maybe if you're taking the pills, just do it a little bit more in
Before,
advance,
yeah.
so that your body has more time to break that down.
Okay.
Chug some water after.
Yeah.
Chug
It's
water.
a neat trick.
No, I've seen, because I was,
Oh, okay. I'm like,
because
do you do
Jill told
this?
me about
Do you
this
do
a while
this?
ago, and
Do
I
you
was
do
like,
this?
maybe I'll just carry some pills around in my purse.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if that was
Yeah.
gonna be as good.
No, I would just check and see if
Yeah,
if
if
they're
it's just
mainly
apple
just like,
cider.
I guess, dehydrated apple
Yeah.
cider vinegar, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They might put some other things in there to help. Well, I would just be wary of the gummies
Yep.
and other things
And
that
other
include
mix
sweeteners.
additives. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then adequate hydration is really essential to supporting stable blood sugar. Adequate hydration helps maintain our blood volume and our circulation to help our blood get the glucose to the cells where it can be used for energy. If you do happen to have higher blood glucose from eating a sweet, being well hydrated will help your kidneys to more effectively flush the glucose out of your system. And then I think everyone's heard that dehydration can be misinterpreted by our bodies as hunger as well. So if you are feeling a sweet craving and you haven't had a drink of water for a while, maybe having a glass of water before you give into that might help reduce the craving. A good rule of thumb is to drink half of your body weight in ounces of water per day for optimal hydration. Okay, movement is the next biggest impact on stable blood sugar levels after these eating tips, and especially movement after eating. Taking a brisk walk or doing some household chores, if you have a lot of dishes after a big family dinner, playing with your kids, or having a dance party like these fun people are doing. Anything that actively engages your muscles will help to absorb glucose. And the cool part about this is that when you do actively engage your muscles after you eat, it absorbs the glucose directly without the help of insulin. The receptors that insulin typically activates are brought directly to the cell surface, so glucose can get into the cells, and so this helps maintain your insulin sensitivity as well. Additionally, if your exercise regimen has kind of gone by the wayside over the holidays, you can do some exercise snacks. A study found that doing bursts of activity, specifically 10 squats every 45 minutes over a prolonged period of sitting, so a day at work, 8 hours, doing those exercise snacks several times can be even more effective than taking one 30-minute walk. So guess what we're gonna do now? 10 squats. We all, we had a healthy meal, but let's get up since we've been sitting for a while and just do a few squats. And the
I
other,
don't think I do my squats correctly.
What's that?
And my
This is your
knees,
chance.
my knees will pop.
and anything that activates and uses your muscles will help, but doing activities like squats that engage your glutes and other large muscles are particularly effective because they are large glucose sinks. they'll soak up a lot. Okay, that's probably 10 minutes.
You get to know.
Good job.
You're a good
Water.
spot.
Okay. And then adequate sleep is also very important in supporting stable blood sugar levels. Getting less than 7 hours of sleep, unfortunately, even one night of less than adequate sleep can cause glucose fluctuations and impact your stress hormones the next day, which can lead to higher blood glucose levels. Additionally, inadequate sleep can imbalance our hunger hormones, so we can have more of that hunger hormone ghrelin and less of our satiety hormone leptin, which can just make it hard for us to resist temptation when we're faced with sweets. So trying to keep a consistent sleep schedule and get a minimum of 7 hours of sleep is recommended. And if all else fails and you do have a rough night of sleep, the next morning, if you could try to get 10 to 15 minutes of bright, ideally natural, but if not natural, artificial is okay, sunlight. This will help to reset your circadian clock and put you back on track to rebalance your stress and your hunger hormones that day. So there are some ways to rescue yourself as well. And then my last tip is on stress management. This is a big one. If you have a stress management practice, try to keep it up at least in smaller doses over the holidays, because that being chronically stressed can impact and further exacerbate blood sugar issues. One tip I have around this is to try not to drink caffeine on an empty stomach if you're a morning coffee or tea drinker. If you have caffeine on an empty stomach, it can trigger a cortisol spike, which will then imbalance your glucose levels. So try to either pair your caffeine with or follow your high protein breakfast with your caffeine instead of drinking it first thing. Okay, lastly, we are all human. I know I always have at least one splurge over the holidays, if not more. Everyone goes overboard, so here are some simple tips, kind of a mini summary of what we just went through for how you can recover if you do find yourself going overboard. So this is for the next day. Double down on that high protein breakfast. Make sure you are getting that and minimize the carbs that you're eating the next morning. If you do fast a little bit, maybe consider shortening your fast so you can get that protein and fiber, which will help to steady those levels right from the start. We talked about not eating as much, but this would be the day to add in a couple of additional snacks that are protein, fiber, and healthy fat focused, because this will help to further support your body as it returns back to that stable level. Make sure you focus on hydration. Sugar is dehydrating, and high levels of blood sugar can actually cause your cells to run out of the water that they need to produce energy. So this could leave you feeling even more sluggish than you probably already do after having a sugar binge. So drink plenty of water. If you can add some electrolytes, even just in the form of lemon or a pinch of salt, this will help to further support that fluid transport and help your body get back to normal. And then lastly, consider popping a probiotic. We talked about how sugar imbalances our gut microbiome. Sugar feeds the bad bacteria in our gut and can negatively affect that microbiome as well as the integrity of our gut lining. And so either have a high quality probiotic or eat some fermented food. This would be yogurt, kombucha, sauerkraut, fermented pickles, or the high quality sourdough. So one good breakfast following a sugar splurge might be some Greek yogurt. That would give you the fermentation and the protein focus to help you get back on track. So in summary, it's not about deprivation. It's about making a plan and having informed choices to help you get through the holiday season, feeling your best while also maintaining your health and taking care of your body. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Teddy. Wow.
What are your recommendations for alcohol?
Questions?
Since I know we all like to consume.
I chatted with Lindsay wanted to come, but she's wasn't able to, and so she wanted me to talk through with her yesterday. And she goes, alcohol. That was her first question. So I'm prepared. So So alcohol is interesting because it does actually initially reduce your blood sugar levels, and that's because your body will prioritize the processing of alcohol over all else because it's the most toxic substance that it's processing. And so then your liver will prioritize the alcohol over processing and releasing of the glucose, and so that's why your levels will drop. However, in the long term, that's not a good strategy. The most important thing I think to think about with alcohol is just that it will reduce your inhibitions. And so if you know that you're going to be indulging in a drink or two, just really having your plan for eating well mapped out and kind of rehearsed to help you stick to it, knowing that the more you drink, the more your inhibitions will go down and the less that you'll be able to resist some of those temptations. So.
And is there a certain type of alcohol that is better for blood sugar and something that's worse, or it's just all bad? Or it's all bad?
I think the line is that like the clear spirits are better. Beer is gonna have gluten in it, and so I don't know if that will affect your levels more.
Yeah.
Seems like if you're mixing it with
And
dresses and other
and the
sugary
mixes.
things
that's a
would
good
be
point.
hard.
If you're mixing it with sugar, and
Mimosas
that
are
will be
going
a
out the
double.
door.
Yeah.
Double.
Just drink it straight.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like my tequila straight. Yes.
So, yeah, I think
Vinegar
that this
plus
line is still that wine is,
Yeah.
can be okay, low
Okay.
sugar wine, maybe more healthy,
Okay.
or a clear spirit.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be part of your blood management strategy.
Okay.
This is very thorough.
That's great.
Yes, you have a handout to take home, some apple cider vinegar you can stick in your purses to take out.
Do you have a type of probiotic that you recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. I would just look for one that has multiple strains. If it has multiple strains, will give you more broad coverage. And then the biggest concern, I would stay away from like the Walgreens branded ones, because you want one that's been studied and ideally will make it into your gut alive, and some of the cheaper ones are just not as effective.
Okay.
If you do enjoy fermented foods, that's probably better than the
okay.
pill. That's
Okay.
the best way to go. But a lot of people don't enjoy sauerkraut and kombucha.
What do you recommend for, I'm thinking like late night snacks, not necessarily late night, but thinking about that sometimes Thanksgiving or like Christmas dinner is at like 1 or 2, and then so then like at 7 you're like, I'm like hungry again.
Yeah,
Like-
I would complex carb. So the complex carbs are like all whole fruits and vegetables, beans, a piece of whole wheat toast, a complex carb and a little bit of protein. And probably my recommendation would be to keep that late night meal on the smaller side, because one other symptom that I ended up taking off, because I'm like, oh, everyone's dealing with this, but in the middle of the night wakenings can also be a sign of dysregulated blood sugar. We're all in perimenopause, so we're probably all dealing with that no matter what. But the closer you eat to sleep, the more your sleep will be dysregulated. So if you have a light protein, fiber, and healthy fat snack, then that's
Seems good to plan for that. Otherwise it's like another piece of pie.
yeah, just keep the dessert going. Like I ate a balanced meal several hours ago. Right?
We're at dessert again.
Do you have a rule of thumb for like how far in advance to eat from bedtime?
3
3 hours.
3 hours.
Okay.
Okay.
3 hours is best.
Okay.
I think that's kind of the general blanket recommendation.
Yeah.
If that's impossible, like if you are always eating dinner, I eat dinner a lot at 8:30 when my children get home from swimming. So 2 hours is
Okay.
try not to get into that window. Yeah, good question.
If you have a tradition of, I'm just thinking about my, like Christmas morning, it's like mimosas and cinnamon rolls, and like tradition. So it's seeming like eat some protein and fiber before the cinnamon rolls.
Can you have some eggs, or if all else fails, like a little cup of Greek yogurt or something
No, me, I'm not
before
gonna
you
eat
have
eggs
the
at all.
cinnamon rolls?
Cottage cheese?
Yeah,
Cottage cheese?
yeah.
That would help.
I'm just trying. I'm making an actual plan for my
Some
life.
scoops of cottage cheese. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I think I do. I'm like, well, I know I'm gonna have the cinnamon roll, so I should not eat anything else because that's like too many calories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But saving it up and then certainly any sugar on an empty